panel pwyllgor gwaith ar awdurdod tân. Guy ymestyn croeso
Fire and Rescue Authority Executive Panel, I'd like to extend a very special welcome to Councillor David Jones from Ynys Môn, representing the Eithwy ward. This is David's first meeting. He took over from Councillor Ken Taylor, who has stood down. Welcome, David. So let us make a start with the first item on the agenda. Apologies. I've received apologies from the Vice Chair, Paul Cunningham. Lisa, have we received any further apologies?
Yes, I have apologies from Councillor Gareth Roberts and Councillor Carol Beard.
Thank you. So the second item, declarations of interest. Does anyone have an interest they would like to declare, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm the chair of the Scrutiny Committee for the joint partnership between Denbighshire and Conway. So I don't know if it's an interest. Gareth will probably correct it, but I'm the chair that scrutinises the PSB.
So, Chair, that's not an interest that needs to be declared. Interests typically arise in one's private life, although it can include where we are debating something that affects an outside body of a public nature as well. But we're not debating any issues.
Okay, that's good.
Are there any further declarations of interest? I cannot see any raised hands, so we'll move on to item number 3. I've not received any notice of any urgent matters, so there is nothing to highlight under item number 3. So we'll move swiftly on to item number 4, the minutes of the meeting, the last meeting of the 12th of December. Is someone happy to, first of all, propose that they are accurate, please?
I'm happy to propose that they're a correct record, Chair.
I was just going to say there is an alteration in the Chris is down as Anglesey County Council and Alan is down as yeah, and Alan Hughes is down as a different council, but he should be Denbighshire.
Well done, Gareth, for spotting the deliberate mistakes. If we can
just to make sure that you know I've read them.
Well done, Gareth.
Other than that, are we happy to propose that they be adopted? Chris, are you happy to propose?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to propose.
And Gareth, are you happy to second?
Yeah.
Will you show that you're all in agreement, please? Diolch yn fawr. And then going on to matters arising, under part 2 last time there was an update on the possibility of industrial action, and I know that the Chief would like to give us an update as to what's happened in relation to that. Thank you, Chief.
Hi, chilies. You've got 2 veggie chilies.
Thank you.
Actually, I might need to, do I need to drop out here because I'm what am I?
A former
member of the
firefighter.
Fire Brigade Union, sorry. I don't know whether it counts anymore.
So you're, Chair, Councillor Triggs, you're not an active firefighter, otherwise you wouldn't be serving on the committee. So the debate about the pay settlement and the industrial action isn't going to affect you in a way that gives you a prejudicial interest.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, as you will recall, I have given a number of updates around the pay negotiations for firefighters and officers and people conditioned to Grey Book terms and conditions. I'm pleased to be able to announce that there has been a settlement of that dispute, or that aspect of the dispute. So many of you will have heard the news that the National Joint Council made a pay offer on the 7th of February, which was a revised offer, which included a 7% pay rise backdated to July last year and a 5% from this July. The Fire Brigades Union decided to ballot its members with a recommendation that they should accept that offer. And I'm pleased to say that with that ballot became an overwhelming acceptance. I believe the turnout was 84% of all eligible members, of which 96% voted to accept. As I say, we very much welcome a settlement which avoids industrial action and which gives our firefighters a much needed pay rise. And in response to that, North Wales Fire and Rescue Service officially stood down its preparations for business continuity on the 8th of March. I think it should unfortunately still be noticed that there was no additional funding for this in Wales, and it means that we will have to meet the cost of this from within our own budget. And there's papers on the meeting this afternoon which will explain just what the implications of that might be and why it means that the emergency fire cover review, which was initially instigated to improve fire emergency cover in North Wales, will have to have at least an element of can we make savings through this. But we will try and balance the need for a robust emergency cover across the whole of North Wales with the fact that we need a sustainable budget for the future. And I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, as you said, it's really good news that we've avoided any industrial action, but it is bad news that the hole in our finances is even larger now. Are there any questions or comments for the Chief? No, I don't see any other matters arising from the minutes of the last meeting unless anybody else has got anything that they want to raise. I can't see any hands going up. In that case, we can move on to item number 6, which is the budget update. So I'm going to hand over to Helen MacArthur. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Just bear with me a moment. Thank you. This report provides an update on the revenue budget for 2023-24. The budget itself was considered by the Full Fire and Rescue Authority at its meeting on the 16th of January. Although members would not normally expect to receive an update before the start of the financial year, as the Chief has just outlined, these are exceptional times. And when the budget was set, we did outline a number of risks and uncertainties that were present at that time. What the paper on the agenda seeks to do is build the position currently. So members will recall that when we set the budget, there was an increase of 9.9%. But even at that level, it was necessary to make internal in-year savings of 1.4 million. In addition to that, when setting the budget, it was noted that the pay awards for the firefighters remained outstanding. And now they were outstanding both for 2022-23 and also 2023-24. And also the pay awards for staff conditioned to the local government contracts were outstanding for 23-24. In addition to that, the planning assumptions that we made at that time were that the 22-23 pay award was settled 5% for firefighters, and that we included a 4% pay award for 2023-4. And as you've just heard, those actual settlements were much higher. So the pay offer of 5% for 2022-23 was rejected, and the FBU ballot for strike action confirmed a high level of support. Those national negotiations concluded with the offer of 7% for 2022-23 and 5% for the forthcoming year. Clearly, this is above our planning assumption for both financial years, and the impact for that on 2023-4 is an additional cost pressure of £1 million. So therefore, the savings that we need to find internally within the next financial year are £2.4 million. The position is less clear for those staff on local government contracts, and since writing this paper, the initial offer has been made, which equates to a set amount per person. And again, this is above the initial planning assumption and will result in a cost pressure if it is accepted. Currently, the unions have indicated that this is unacceptable, but no further information is available to us at this time. Clearly, this puts us in a very, very difficult position, and it's proposed that the cost pressures arising from the settlement of the firefighters' pay dispute should be addressed via the use of reserves during 23-24. What this avoids is the use of a supplemental levy at this time, but is noting that we need to be cognizant of ongoing challenges and other cost pressures across all of our expenditure heads. It's worth noting also that the use of reserves is not sustainable, and coupled with those additional pressures of 1.4, we now have an underlying deficit of 2.4 million. This will have unavoidable implications for future service delivery options and also the levy for 2024-5 onwards. So the emergency cover review will consider a range of options, and they'll be presented to members over the forthcoming months. I think it's important to note that wherever possible, we're trying to manage these cost pressures, and we've put stringent internal controls in place. And where possible, we will maintain that dialogue with our constituent local authorities to ensure that at every step of the way that there's joint understanding of the position that we find ourselves in. But overall, a very difficult and challenging position to be in. And as the Chief has confirmed, that emergency cover review is so vital now. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Helen. Just for the information of members who might not be aware, we don't have a level playing field in Wales, because I learned that in terms of South Wales Fire and Rescue Service and also Mid and West Wales, the increase in the levy that they received was around 13 or 14%, whereas we in North Wales, it was 9.9%. So, but that's the situation. Any comments or questions for Helen, please? David? You're on mute, David.
Diolch, Cadeirydd, y Cyntaeddiw.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Helen, for outlining the position. And I have comments more than a question, really. As everyone will recall, we were in a difficult position Christmas time, and this means that we are short of where we wanted to be in terms of our ability to spend next year. We were using reserves in the first place to cope with that position, and then we move forward with some ideas in order to bridge the gap of 1.4 million. Now, the pay agreement is good news, of course, for our staff members, and the fact that we're able to sustain our service. However, it increases this gap now to 2.4 million now. And it is nip and tuck if we can avoid an additional levy. Now, this is something that nobody wishes. I don't want it. The Chief doesn't want it. You as members don't want it. The local authorities don't want it. They don't want an additional levy in the middle of a year. It signifies that we're not able to control our situation, and it's messy. We do have sufficient reserves for us to manage going forward without this additional levy this year. As long as nothing else from left field comes our way. If something big were to come our way, and if it were to hit us in the middle of the year, then we would have to go for an additional levy. We can cope this year by using reserves, and having used the reserves in the current financial year, and for next year, they will become rather scarce by the end of the year, and you can only use reserves once, of course. Now, they are there due to the prudential governance on your part over the past few years, and we are fortunate that we're in this position in order to move forward. However, this won't be possible come 2024. By that time, we will have to find a way of bridging the 2.4 million gap. Now, some of this will be down to a higher levy than we would like to impose on local authorities next year. We'll have to communicate this with our friends in the 6 counties over the coming weeks and months. We cannot wait until the autumn. We will have to notify them of the probability of a high levy next year, come what way. But it would appear that we need to compromise between a high levy and savings. And the review of the fire cover is continuing. Now, we haven't commissioned them expressly to find savings. However, by now, we do very much hope that the options that they come up with will provide you with opportunities to consider whether it's possible to make some significant savings in order to bridge this gap. So that's the position we find ourselves in. This is an update report. You're not expected to make any executive decision on the basis of this report, other than the fact, of course, that we need to notify everyone. And members of the audit committee this morning felt that the authority should be notifying people through yourselves, Chair, and also members of Parliament, because of the fact that central government and employers have agreed, but there's no mention of any more funding from Westminster to help us with this. Some members this morning wanted us to raise awareness of members of Parliament who are there to represent us, but also there's a message for all of us to take back to our constituent authorities who will have to fund some of this next year. Thank you, Chair.
Just for the information,
thank you, David.
I did specifically raise in the social partnership meeting with the Deputy Minister responsible for fire rescue services how difficult and challenging the budget setting had been for us in North Wales, and how we facing very real financial pressures. Gareth, would you like to come in? Diolch.
Yes, Chair. Just as a percentage, what are we looking at if that was to go on to the annual levy? Are we looking at a 5 or 6% as a levy?
I haven't put it in percentage terms at the present time, but it's in terms of the cost per person across North Wales, it works out at about £3.55. I can work out that percentage quite quickly, actually.
It would depend, because
and of course, what else you've got to go on that.
Yeah, what else we got to as committed developments, and what else we got as general inflation for the next year. If the forecasts are that general inflation may come down during this calendar year, but there's no surety of that. And you know, until we know what the pay awards for the future are, it's very difficult to put a percentage. But I would suspect if we put everything on the levy rather than looking for savings, you are talking something in the realms of 20% increase rather than 6%.
Helen, can I ask, you pointed out that the pay negotiations haven't been completed yet, local government staff, and that's a risk if it's beyond, well, it looks as if it is going to be beyond what we've actually budgeted for. How much of a hit could that be in terms of our additional shortfall if it is quite a hike compared to what we put in the medium-term financial plan?
If the current calculation is, if it's settled at the offer, it'll be an increased cost of about 130,000. But if it's rejected and we subsequently receive an uplifted offer, it's clearly going to increase over and above that.
Okay.
Not a
Thank you.
significant challenge. In terms of the 2.5, that represents just under a 6% impact on the levy, but as David has just outlined, that's before we have the cost inflation for any 24, 25 or any initiatives, because I think members will recall that part of the mechanism for meeting the budget this year was to take out a number of developments, such as the wildfire developments as well. So clearly a very difficult position for us.
Thank you, Helen. As David has pointed out, there aren't any decisions to undertake in today's meeting regarding the budget. It's all for information. So unless there's any other comments or questions, I'm going to move on to the recommendations. And you'll see from the report that there's 4 recommendations before you. Members are asked to note the conclusion of the pay negotiations for firefighters and the associated further cost pressures. Consider the short-term use of reserves to address the cost pressures arising from the firefighters' pay settlement. Note that the pay negotiations for all other staff remain outstanding at this time, and notes that the £2.4 million underlying deficit will have unavoidable implications for future service delivery and increased levy for 2024-25, which we've all referred to. Can I have somebody to propose those recommendations, please? Thank you, Rob. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Gareth. Will you show that you agree with the recommendations? Diolch yn fawr. So moving on to the next item, which is the Public Service Board Wellbeing Plans. And is it yourself, Helen, that's presenting this again? Thank you.
I will indeed. A very brief update. It's to introduce the wellbeing plans to the members. By way of a background, members will appreciate that we are statutory partners and we sit on the public service boards across North Wales. On a 5-yearly basis, we undertake a wellbeing assessment, and from that wellbeing assessment flows the wellbeing plan. And the plans in the pack today cover the period 2023 to 2028. There are 3 plans appended. One relates to Ynys Môn and Gwynedd, second one the Conway and Denbighshire, and then finally the Flintshire and Wrexham. This item is on the agenda today for information for the members and to seek approval for these then to progress through the public service boards. In terms of the detail, there's an awful lot of detail within them, and there is a huge amount of commonality. Clearly, the pressures facing our communities are unique to those communities, but there's a number of core items as well. So I'm happy to take any questions on the wellbeing plans, but we're seeking approval from members for these items. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And members should be aware or familiar with their own local plans. It was quite interesting. I've looked at the objectives within each plan, and there's some commonality across the 3 regions, but there's also some differences as well. But obviously, we're not identical as we go across North Wales. Are there any comments or questions for Helen, please? No, as Helen has pointed out, it is for information really. So if I can refer you to the recommendations, members are requested to note the requirements of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and approve the 3 wellbeing plans in their capacity as the Fire and Rescue Authority. Could I have somebody to propose, please? You're slow on the button this afternoon. Diolch yn fawr, David. David proposes. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Rob. Will you show that you agree, please? Diolch yn fawr, that's carried. So on to now the next item, which is item 8, which is the draft improvement and wellbeing plan incorporating annual action plan, which I think is also referred to as the authority's corporate plan. And I think it's Deputy Chief Fire Officer Stuart Forshaw who's presenting this. Diolch, Stuart.
Diolch, Chair, thank you. So members, the purpose of this report is to inform you of the progress being made towards compiling the draft 2023-24 revision of the authority's corporate plan for approval at the authority's next meeting in April. As you're aware, fire and rescue authorities in Wales are required to publish improvement objectives in accordance with Local Government Wales Measure 2009, and also the wellbeing objectives in compliance with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act in Wales. For the purposes of the authority's planning process, these are treated as one of the same. In March 2021, the authority published a 3-year corporate plan to run from 2021 to 2024, in which it set out its 7 long-term improvements and wellbeing objectives and the actions that it proposed to take in the first year, 21-22. In October 22, members agreed that the improvements and wellbeing objectives would remain unchanged for the final year of 23-24. So therefore, the 23-24 corporate plan has been updated to include the actions achieved in the past year, along with the priorities against each objective for its final year during 23-24. The key challenges for the authority as it moves into the next financial year remain, and these relate to the availability of our on-call fire crews, maintenance and development of firefighter skills, and having sufficient corporate capacity to meet current and future demand. The authority's 23-24 annual review therefore includes confirmation of the authority's long-term improvement and wellbeing objectives, an outline of what actions are planned to be achieved or progressed in North Wales Fire and Rescue Service during the coming year. It reflects the key challenges facing the authority, including those 3 that were clarified through the Chief Fire Officer's situational assessment. It takes account of Audit Wales's findings and recommendations and considers the ongoing work of the Public Services Boards, especially when objectives align to our own authority's plans. It ensures preparedness for any future amendments arising from an updated national framework for fire and rescue services in Wales, and any additional recommendations from the Wellbeing of Future Generation Commissioner's Office. And finally, it recognises and aligns plans to the authority's revenue budget, which we've discussed today, our capital plan and the medium-term financial plan. So therefore, it's recommended that members are asked to note the progress being made towards compiling the 23-24 revision of the corporate plan that we presented for a full approval at the authority in April, and the refreshed appearance of the plan and its annual review in comparison to previous years. So diolch yn fawr, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Diolch, Stuart. Any questions or comments for Stuart? Perhaps I could ask a question, Stuart. You mentioned about sort of recommendations arising from reports carried out by Audit Wales. Members will be aware that that Dan Stevens, the fire advisor for the Minister, has carried out a number of reviews, thematic inspections recently, and those reviews have led to a number of recommendations. I couldn't see any reference to those in the corporate plan. Should they be included and referred to?
So yes, Chair, the maintenance and development of firefighter skills are one of the 3 key challenges that the authority has mentioned. So they will be picked up in that area of the corporate plan, which kind of points towards our training and development of staff, and which, as previously presented, will be picked up in our organisational learning committee. So though it isn't specifically mentioned or bullet pointed, it will get picked up in the maintenance and development of firefighter skills, which is a continuation of last year's plan as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? No, in that case, I'll refer you to the recommendations, which is members are asked to note the progress being made towards compiling the 2023-24 revision of the corporate plan for 2021-24 that will be presented for approval to the full authority in April 2023. And secondly, the refreshed appearance of the 2023-24 corporate plan annual review in comparison to previous years. Could I have somebody to propose those recommendations, please?
You have this still on.
Diolch, David. David proposed. Seconder. Thank you, Alan. Will you show that you agree with the recommendations, please? Diolch yn fawr. Thank you. So moving on to item 9, which is the pay policy statement, and back to you, Helen, please. Diolch.
Diolch. This document is an annual document which is required to be published before the commencement of the new financial year. It's a requirement of the Localism Act, and coupled with guidance from the Welsh Government, its overall aim is to provide transparency to readers with regards to the pay for all of our employees. There are a number of important aspects that I would like to draw to your attention. Firstly, within section 3.2, this highlights that for all staff groups, we use national pay scales and where they exist and advocate the collective bargaining arrangements. Very relevant to today's meeting, as we've spoken about that in relation both to the local government staff, but also the firefighters. Largely, this includes a cost of living annual review, which we've clearly discussed at length. Referring to sections 4, 5 and 6, these sections deal with the arrangements for the remuneration of the Chief Fire Officer and senior staff. Senior staff includes the Principal Officer team, also the Monitoring Officer and the Treasurer. National pay scales do not exist for these roles, and although the national negotiation covers the cost of living, it doesn't set benchmark salaries. So within these, the benchmark is reviewed periodically by the Fire and Rescue Authority against the sector average as a whole. This work was last actioned by the Fire and Rescue Authority in September 2021, and therefore this is the second year following that exercise. More notably, we do not pay bonuses for performance pay for any staff, and that includes our senior staff. Section 9 provides the reader with a summary table of all of our employee groups, including their terms and conditions of service and their pension arrangements. Our lowest paid employee is the equivalent of just over £21,000 per annum, and that's as at April 2022. And this is above the real living wage. So we don't have any employees who are paid below that, the living wage. And the pay multiple of the lowest member of staff with the Chief Fire Officer is 1 to 6.59. And that's very much within the spirit of the Hutton Review, which set a maximum multiple of 20 times. If you take that multiple with the median of all of our staff, all of our full-time staff, excluding those on retained contracts, the multiple is 1 to 4.33. To all of our staff, we provide a full range of support mechanisms, and that can include access to ITAS vouchers, physiotherapy, corporate discounts, and also employee assistance packages. It's important to note that we don't routinely employ individuals through their own personal service companies. You might know this as off-payroll arrangements, and it's been very topical across the public sector for a number of years. That isn't something that we routinely do, but where we do find it necessary to consider using consultants, we always undertake the HMRC test of employment status check. The report also includes a range of appendices which set out the salary scales applicable to all staff. And these do include the updated pay scales for the firefighters. But sadly, because the other pay negotiations are outstanding, these are the salaries that are currently in payment. And it's just worth noting that to members. It's quite a significant report, and I'm happy to take any questions from members that they may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Just to reiterate for the information of members, there hasn't been any change in the implementation of this policy, but it has to come before us because we are required legally to approve it on an annual basis. Any questions or comments for Helen, please? David?
Nothing to add really, but perhaps we should declare an interest as we're mentioned in the report or in the policy under 6.2. So I don't think it's prejudicial, Gareth, but I think we should probably, as the chiefs on this meeting, just declare an interest.
Gareth?
Just to pick up on that, Chair, we are affected as officers have a slightly different code of conduct to members. We don't have to declare personal and prejudicial interests. We declare an interest per se, but it wouldn't be personal or prejudicial. But yes, as the Assistant Chief Fire Officer said, it describes the situation rather than making any changes. Gets a lot more awkward if you were to start proposing changes, Chair. That's the point at which we need to start thinking about the level of interest that we might need to declare and whether officers would need to step back.
Well, I don't see any hands being raised to propose any changes or anything else, so I'm going to go straight to the recommendations. And members are requested to note the requirements of the Localism Act 2011 and approve the pay policy statement for the 2023-24 financial year. Can I have somebody to propose, please? Thank you, Gareth. The seconder? Thank you, Rob. Will you show that you're in favour, please? Diolch yn fawr, thank you. So going on now to item 10, which is the performance monitoring report, and back to DCFO Stuart Forshaw. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, the purpose of this report is to provide you with information about the instance activity during the first 9 months of the financial year 22-23. This is in relation to the authority's improvement and wellbeing objectives and also other notable instance activity. So during the first 9 months of the year, the service has attended 4,656 emergency incidents. And this is an increase of just over 16% compared with the same period of 21-22. A breakdown and a narrative of the incident types can be found in section 1 of the main report, which are categorised as fires, false alarms, special service calls. You will note that there's been a 37% increase in the attendance of non-fire emergencies, which we classify as special service incidents, and they can be found in section 8 of the main report. This follows a change in our policy during the previous reporting year around the attendance of special service incidents, which is to provide more assistance to the public and partner agencies, whilst at the same time increasing our visibility within the communities of North Wales. It is, however, pleasing to report that the number of accidental dwelling fires in the home, so house fires, have continued to reduce, with 258 incidents attended by fire crews during the past 9 months. This is compared to 314 during the same period of 21-22. And details on accidental dwelling fires can be found in section 4 of the main report. At those fires we have attended in the home, smoke and heat detectors ownership were present at almost 88% of occasions, with details and actions taken by the service to continually try and increase the number of smoke detector ownership in people's homes found in section 6 of the main report. It's also pleasing to report that no fire deaths have occurred during the first 9 months of that the report covers. And there's also been a reduction in the number of serious injuries at accidental dwelling fires from 4 to 2 compared to the same period of 21-22. And again, this can be read in more detail in section 5 of the main report. Conscious that this could change, the service continues to deliver fire prevention interventions and initiatives to support fire safety in the home and within the communities of North Wales. Wildfires continue to be an area of focus for us, which can be a result of extreme weather events linked to climate change, and is an area of growth in the UK in comparison to the reduction of house fires, which we just discussed. Wildfires can be particularly challenging incidents for the service to deal with because of their erratic nature, potential size and intensity, and because of the rural and rural-urban interface environments which they tend to occur. During the first 9 months of this financial year, there was 55 wildfires in North Wales, and that's an increase from Q1 and Q2 during 22-23, where we attended a combined total of 359 vehicles. Sorry, where we attended, and that was a combined total of 359 vehicles being required for over 1,108 hours. The changes in our attendance incidents at HMP Berwyn implemented during the pandemic, and the fire safety advice during this period has also resulted in a reduction in fires attended at the prison. And you'll see that this is 22 in comparison to 13 in the same period, 21-22. The upward trend in false alarms continued, with the service attending 2,064 false alarms, and that's 175 more compared to the same period of last year. These originating from AFA systems increased from 138, and they represent 58% of false alarms that we attend. Non-residential automatic fire alarms also increased from 142 to 198, and this is mainly due to increases in hospitals and medical care and educational settings. The main causes of activation at non-residential automatic fire alarms are down to faulty activation, accidentally carelessly setting off, chemical and aerosols, and also steam. There was also an increase in other residential AFAs from 83 to 91, with nurses, doctors' accommodation and hotel motels increasing from 8 to 23 and 11 to 18 respectively. However, student halls of residence and residential homes have decreased from 27 to 12 and 22 to 10 respectively. Automatic fire alarms in dwellings in homes showed a continued upward trend, increasing from 833 to 907, with house of single occupancy being the lead contributor to this increase. That's followed by bungalows, also increasing, and this may be due to an increase in care line system installations in homes of those most vulnerable from fire in our communities. Of the 907 dwelling AFAs, cooking and burnt toast was the main cause of activation. This increased from 433 to 452. Slight increases were also recorded in other categories, though there was a decrease in the number of automatic fire alarms as a result of smoking. More detailed information on false alarms and actions taken by the service to reduce them can be found in section 7 of the main report. The service attended 177 road traffic collisions, and this is a 14% increase compared to last year. And at 30% of incidents, it involved the extrication or release of people. Although the service attended more road traffic collisions this year to date, the percentage of road traffic collisions which involved the release or extrication of persons was lower in the same period in 18-19 and 20 and 21, and also the 3-year average. More detailed information on road traffic collisions can be found in section 9 of the main report. Moving on to the number of safe and well checks that our staff have completed this year. We've completed 13,487 in the first 9 months of the year. And almost 35% of those were at high priority residents. And those generally come from referrals from partner agencies, and a narrative on safe and well check performance and what we're doing to increase the number of safe and well checks in the community can be found in section 10 of the main report. Finally, our planned 20 station availability for fire crews across the service was achieved on almost 95% of occasions, compared to 81% in the same period of last year. However, this is still lower than the 273 days or 99% achieved in the same period of 18-19. And as you know, members, this continues to be an area of real focus for the service. So that concludes my report. The recommendation is members note the contents of the performance monitoring report, which includes a lot more detail, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Stuart. And I think sort of the results contained in the report are very positive indeed. And I'd just like to express my thanks to the excellent work that the staff continue to give. Any comments or questions on the report for Stuart, please? Rob?
Yeah, just the one, thank you. Item 39, I think that's absolutely brilliant that the availability's gone up. Is there any reason linked to why that's gone up? Has there been efforts made to, I don't know, is it part of recruitment? Have we got more people on those stations that's making that easier to put on the run?
So yeah, Councillor Triggs, thanks for the question. I think you'll remember that April last year we implemented a new structure, and part of that new structure included dedicated recruitment and availability managers across the 3 areas of the service. Though it's going to be a bit of a slow burner, it's possible that the introduction of those roles has contributed to an increase in focus in the availability of stations, but also in the recruitment. And we have seen a net increase during the past 9 months in the number of people that we've managed to recruit into on-call roles, which may be having an effect as well. So it's early days yet, but some positive signs, as you say.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's really good that the availability is coming up. It is the bottom line of what we do, isn't it, as a fire service? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Rob. And members may not be aware, but going back 12 months ago, we didn't have that information in the performance monitoring report, but now we do have that information, because I think it is very important for members to see what the availability is across the whole of North Wales on a daily basis, and to sort of know, are we actually hitting those targets, or to what extent we're hitting those targets in terms of availability. Any other questions or comments for Stuart, please? No? Okay, Stuart has already referred to the recommendation, which is just to note the report. Can I have somebody to propose that we do that, please? Thank you, Rob. Seconder? I think it was a joint tie between David and Alan. We'll take Alan this time. Dear Alan. So will you all show that you agree, please? Thank you, Dear. So going on to item 11, which is the overview of the emergency cover review, and over to ACFO Richard Fairhead. Pnawn da, Richard.
Pnawn da, Cadeirydd, diolch yn fawr. Pnawn da, aelodau. So good afternoon, members. So the purpose of this afternoon's report is to provide information to members around the fire cover, the emergency cover review, which is we're undergoing, and the reason why we're doing it and how we're going to do it. So if we go back to a bit of background, in April 2021, Audit Wales undertook a review of the corporate resilience in North Wales Fire and Rescue Authority and made the following proposal for improvement. And this was to support resilience, the authority should review station locations to identify opportunities to optimise emergency response arrangements. Additionally, the Chief Officer in September 2021 presented to the authority her findings of a situational assessment after the first 100 days. And one of the key risks identified was our ability to maintain sufficient on-call availability, particularly during the day. Now, we in North Wales rely significantly on the on-call crews that provide operational response across the service area. 80% of our stations are staffed wholly by on-call firefighters, so we're an on-call service that is supported by whole-time staff. Now, the challenges around the RDS system, the on-call system, I've spoken to members about before, and they're not just in North Wales, but nationally, and these are around recruitment, retention, people needing to travel further away from home for their primary employment, people needing to travel further away from home to socialise or carry out activities with their families, and of course, work-life balance. Now, the deputy's already mentioned the fact that the 20 pump model, the 20 crew model, we're achieving 95% of the time. However, it isn't easy for us to do, and what we're basically having to do is to supplement the RDS crews on those stations with whole-time staff, which adds a cost to what we're doing. So we do need to develop a medium-term emergency cover response options for the authority to decide how best to provide that equal, fair and sustainable emergency cover for the whole of North Wales, and not just a whole-time complement across the A55 corridor. So we have commissioned an independent company called ORH, and they attended a working group on the 14th of March, so last week, where they went through some of the things in which they were doing to carry out this review. They're a very experienced company. They've got experience of providing support and options for emergency services, not just in the UK, but across the globe. And I'm looking very much forward to some of the work that they're doing. So they've already collected data from us. So they've got the data last 5 years worth of incidents attended. They've got our population statistics, our station locations, demographic factors. They've got the road networks. So they've got already got a lot of data which they're starting now to put into their modelling processes. And they're going to use those their expertise and this data to model options for the authority to consider. And the first options for potential change will be presented to the working group on the 4th of April 2023. Now, initially, the emergency cover review was planned just so we could improve availability without making necessarily any cuts. Although we were potentially looking at perhaps just reallocating where some of our crews were working to provide that equal cover. But as already been identified in the papers earlier and by the Treasurer, potentially we're going to have to ask ORH to provide some options which not only improve availability and improve that fire cover and emergency cover across North Wales, but do also provide some options to make some savings, so that if we're unable to increase the levy by the amount we need, we'll be able to identify some internal savings. So as I've said, the first options that will come to the authority, to the working group, will come to the working group on the 4th of April 2023. So it's recommended that members note the contents of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Diolch, Richard. Any comments or questions for Richard, please?
Stunned silence.
I think perhaps I need to sort of emphasise that, bearing in mind that the Audit Commission have asked us to look at availability and to come up with perhaps better answers, better solutions, that the do nothing option isn't really an acceptable option. So whatever option we decide to choose moving forward will involve change. And just to sort of say that that comes with a bit of a health warning, because we all know as councillors that in our communities, our local communities, they don't always, or very often, they don't embrace change. But we will probably be looking at changes in the structure of the service across North Wales. So just to alert you to that fact, because this is part of our role as members of the authority to make decisions that are in the interests of the service and to try and ensure that the service moves forward. But there may be interesting times ahead, if I put it that way. Any questions or comments for Richard before we move on to the recommendation? David?
Yeah, just diolch I Richard am y
I'd like to
gwahoddiad.
thank Richard for the invitation to the commitment we had from consultants in the working group a week ago. It was quite an eye-opener how they were. I appreciated being there. And I'm sure that members who listened in and who were there in person also appreciated this also. And yes, I'm quite new to the fire authority, but I learned from the discussion there that some of the structure that we have, the whole time stations and so forth, date back to the 1996 reorganisation, where the Clwyd and Gwynedd patterns are different. It might be high time for us to have some change within the structure. And obviously, from the discussion we had previously with regards to the budget and the update on the pay agreement, any contribution to the cost effectiveness would be invaluable as we enter into such a difficult year. Thank you, David. I agree with you 100%.
Recommendation, which is just that we note the contents of the report at this stage. Can I have somebody to propose, please? Thank you, Gareth. A seconder? Thank you, Rob. Will you show that you agree with the recommendation, please? Diolch yn fawr. And going on to item 12, which is the overview of the sustainability plan. Over to ACFO Stuart Millington. Pnawn da, Stuart.
Pnawn da, diolch Cadeirydd, pnawn da pawb. This report seeks to describe the journey that's planned to develop our first environmental strategy for 2023 through to 2030. And this began in our recent working group on the 14th of March. This high-level strategy is intended to be the blueprint for North Wales Fire and Rescue Service to achieve its obligations as a public service in Wales and to be carbon neutral by 2030. So why do we need an environmental strategy? Well, the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act 2015 describes the requirements for a resilient Wales and specifically describes details about the need to consider things like biodiversity and soil, including details around land management and developing healthy ecosystems. It talks about natural green space that will include commitments to social resilience and community well-being. Knowledge of nature includes an increased awareness of biodiversity, as well as water and air quality, includes ecological resilience and developing a healthy environment for all. But in addition to the details described as part of being a resilient Wales, as well as the requirements on public services in Wales to be carbon neutral by 2030, as laid out in the Environment Wales Act of 2016, North Wales Fire and Rescue Service are also a signatory to the Emergency Services Environment and Sustainability Group Sustainability Charter. And this charter sets out the commitments for signatories to work towards net zero carbon emissions through improving energy and efficiency of our states, as well as business travel, to improve resource efficiency and adopt circular economy approach to reducing waste, to restore and enhance local biodiversity, to adapt to inevitable climate change and weather events, to avoid or mitigate pollution of watercourses, as well as to minimise resilience on fossil fuels. So it's planned for the new environmental strategy that will be developed through our future working groups to be a high-level or overarching document that signposts to specific delivery plans. And an example of these delivery plans may include things like fleet decarbonisation plans or a plan for the replacement of station-based heating systems, for example. But there'll be a number of others too. And all of this is in a bid to help us achieve carbon reductions in the three areas for which we are measured. And the three areas for measurement that were described in the recent working group include Scope 1 reductions, which is around the carbon emissions that we directly produce in our vehicles, from our buildings, etc. Scope 2, which in essence, it relates to our electric usage. And Scope 3, everything around our purchasing and procurement activities. So in the forthcoming working groups, our Environment and Sustainability Manager will begin to unpick our current performance and discuss potential ways that carbon reductions can be achieved in partnership with members as we collectively strive towards the 2030 Welsh Government targets. So members are requested to note the contents of this report and to continue to develop the strategy and action plans through the working groups that are planned for the future. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Diolch, Stuart. Any questions or comments for ACFO Stuart Millington, please? Gareth?
Yeah, I'm quite interested to see how the other two services in Wales are approaching this and whether there's any partnership working happening, particularly in the procurement and how we save on our costings. Is it mirrored through the other authorities? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sandlands. So ultimately, the people with expertise in this field are a small group of people, and so they are very much in touch with each other across different agencies and of course in the fire sector. So not only in Wales but also across the UK, our sustainability manager will be looking for areas of good practice to share the best possible outcomes for the communities of North Wales. Specifically, your question in relation to procurement, we do seek every opportunity to procure where it's adding value on an all Wales basis already. So any large items of procurement, we work together. So for example, the most recent of those will be things like the procurement of our new fire kit a couple of years ago. Prior to that, items like our breathing apparatus, we procure those on an all Wales basis. Similarly, fire appliances, large items like that, we seek to put into our procurement documentation, and going forward even more so, the requirements for us to beneficial to our overall carbon reduction strategies around procurement will very much be included as weighted measures for our procurement decisions of the future. So yes, we do lots of work across boundaries to work collectively towards the best outcomes for our carbon reduction.
Thank you for that.
Helen, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to build on what ACFO Millington had said. Across Wales, we are part of a collaborative group of procurement specialists, and that looks at both sustainable procurement and social value. So very much we're looking not only at what we purchase, but how we purchase it, and then working with suppliers at the start of the process to try and reduce down that carbon footprint. So it is very much an evolving science at the present time. But something that we are working collaboratively, because as Stuart has said, we don't have that. It's a big agenda, and it's better to share that workload. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Any other questions or comments for Stuart? No, in that case, I refer you to the recommendation, which is just that we note the contents of the report at this stage. Can I have a proposer, please? Diolch, David. And seconder, Alan. Thank you, Alan. Will you all show that you're in agreement, please? Diolch yn fawr. That concludes today's meeting. There is no urgent matters, as I said at the beginning, so we've completed the agenda. Can I thank everybody for their attendance and their contributions today? Diolch fawr iawn I chi gyd. Farewell.
Thank you.
Diolch, Dylan.
Thank you.